Senator Daniels.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move on to pass on Senate Bill 463 FN. This bill suspends the death penalty until such time as methods exist to ensure that the death penalty cannot be imposed upon an innocent person. While we have been most fortunate here in New Hampshire that the death penalty has not been imposed since the 1930s, this has not been the case in other states. And now we have definitive information that in some cases, innocent people have indeed been executed for crimes they did not commit. While we are fortunate to have one of the most advanced and fairest systems of justice in the world, it is not without flaws. Judges, attorneys, police officers, prosecutors, defense teams, forensic scientists, and even eyewitnesses and jurors can make errors. And we are not exempt from errors here in our own very special state. The adoption of Senate Bill 463 does not repeal the death penalty and merely provide a timeout going forward while science and technology advance. Therefore, the majority of judiciary recommends that the bill be adopted and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Daniels. The bill is now on second reading. Is there any discussion? Senator Pierce.
Mr. President, I'd like to offer for Amendment 887S.
Senator Pierce offers for Amendment 0887S and may speak to his amendment as it's being handed out.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the fourth amendment, unlike the bill, seeks to repeal the death penalty based on a number of legislative findings that are printed here in the fourth amendment, to which I think others may be able to speak. Thank you.
Question is the adoption of for Amendment 0887S. Discussion. Senator Sanborn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to my good friend's floor amendment. Although I'd like to truly acknowledge, Mr. President, I fully appreciate his and the other sponsors' thoughts on this matter. As we know, this isn't a question about political ideology. This is this, I believe, is the most difficult decision we consider in this body. At a level that's so hard to even talk about. But Mr. President, I do rise in opposition to this amendment for a couple of brief reasons I'd like to talk about. First, we know that the state of New Hampshire has an exceptionally narrow focus on what it will consider enacting the death penalty. There's only 7 things that can actually happen that would enable our state to invoke it. 6 that have been around in RSA 630 and 1 that was included recently, which has to do with murder in the case of a home invasion. What I think it's important for us to talk about and understand are 2 very important issues. One, that to seek the death penalty, it needs to be a premeditated murder. It's not coming from an accident. It's coming from a willful decision to do the ultimate harm to people. Number 2, Mr. President, I can tell you as someone who's a lover of liberty, as my good friend from Senate District number 1 just reminded me of, and I'm always so thankful of him reminding me of things like this. In the state of New Hampshire, our government cannot commit someone to death. If it did, you would find me to be a co-sponsor on Senator Pierce's amendment. But in this case, we know that it takes a jury of 12 people who unanimously come together, 12 peers in our society, to make this decision to enact the most grave of punishments. It has the highest of standards. Mr. President, back in 2009, there were several bills that came before the legislature to talk about what should we do in reconsidering keeping or abolishing the death penalty. The Honorable Governor John Lynch put forth a commission which spent significant time, heard from both sides of the argument, 180-page report. Mr. President, we know how the legislature likes to write reports, but even 180 pages is a long, long process. In summary, from that report, This commission came out, although split, in recognizing that our society remains very split on the issue, that it was in the best interest of the state of New Hampshire to retain the death penalty. And in general, they indicated that capital punishment serves several important and legitimate social interests, including instilling confidence in the criminal justice system and acting as a deterrent. That the death penalty is consistent with evolving standards of social decency. Used in New Hampshire, capital punishment is not applied in an arbitrary, unfair, or discriminatory manner, and that no alternative to the death penalty is sufficient to address legitimate social or penal interests in the narrow categories of capital murder for which the death penalty may be imposed in New Hampshire. Mr. President, I learned a lot when we had this last debate, and was truly on the fence of where we should be. And one of the things that really struck me was conversations I had with those who we charge to defend us, the men and women in blue, who every single day they have made a conscious decision to stand in front of danger for our society. We don't ask them to go out on work when there's not going to be a crisis. We don't ask them to go out to work when there might not be the risk of them putting their lives in danger. In fact, they go out and work specifically on those days when their life is in danger. I also had several conversations with corrections officers. Had never considered it before. Had never considered the fact that we are charging people to oversee the most dangerous people in our society. What is the most dangerous person in our society? Someone who's got nothing to lose. We have people in our penal system that are serving life in prison. And the only thing that is stopping them from committing a more heinous act of potentially killing a corrections officer is the fact there is only one more step above life in prison without parole. So when I think about the fact that some people perpetrate crimes of absolute malice that are premeditated, when I think of Kimberly Cates, of which a bunch of high school punks decided to enter into her house at night and hack her and her daughter up with a machete because it was going to be fun. When I think about Officer Briggs, who was standing in line in defense of the people of this state and paid the ultimate price, I believe we have an obligation to ensure that justice is served and that we have a deterrent for those who would wish to do our society the highest harm. And with that, Mr. President, I respectfully ask this body to consider overturning this amendment, voting it down, and voting down the bill as it exists. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Sanborn. Senator Avon?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a difficult topic, and I want to thank the Senator from District 5 for bringing up this amendment. I've been a pro-death penalty person all my life. That's why we wanted to put a pause on it. But having interviewed these honorees who were on death row for 9, 20 years, falsely accused, I think we need to put the brakes on it. And I think it's time that we seriously look at how we go about doing this. I know that New Hampshire doesn't seem to have a problem, but I think it'd be a shame if we waited until we did have a problem. I do support this amendment, and rather than having long discussions, because this is such a serious topic, I would ask that we would all just put our conscience on it and move forward. Thank you.
Bill to Senator Ava, Senator Daniels.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to preface my remarks by saying this issue is probably the hardest one that I have had to deal with both in the House and the Senate in my 20 years around here. And over the course of time, I have voted both ways on it. But I now am supporting this amendment for 4 reasons. Number one, it accomplishes the thing that we were trying to accomplish with the original bill, which was to ensure that no innocent person gets on death row. Number two, I recently found out that there was a lab down in Massachusetts that does DNA assessment, and that they were so overloaded, they were actually fudging the analysis on hair analysis. Number three, I've had the opportunity to look into the eyes of someone who spent 17 years on death row and was exonerated for it. Number four, if we repeal this now, we all know that it can be put back in by any future session. But I think this accomplishes what we want. For me, I want to make sure that no one ever gets put on death row because of some mistake, that they are indeed innocent. And the best way to do that is to repeal this right now until technology catches up. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Daniels. The question is on the adoption of Floor Amendment 0887S. Any further discussion?
Roll call.
Second.
Roll call is requested by Senator Ava, seconded by Senator Daniels. The question is the adoption of Floor Amendment 0887S. Are you ready for the question? The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Woodburn.
Yes.
Senator Forster. No. Senator Bradley.
No.
Senator Waters.
Yes.
Senator Pierce.
Yes.
Senator Cataldo.
Yes.
Senator Hosmer.
Yes.
Senator Little.
No.
Senator Sanborn.
No.
Senator Kelly.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Avard.
Yes.
Senator Lasky.
Yes.
Senator Carson.
No.
Senator Feltes.
Yes.
Senator Booton.
No.
Senator Reagan.
No.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Birdsell.
No.
Senator D'Alessandro.
No.
Senator Fuller Clark.
Yes.
Senator Prescott.
No.
Senator Stiles.
No.
Senator Morse.
No. The amendment's defeated 12-12. We're now on the original bill. Is there any discussion on Senate Bill 463? Senator Bradley.
I move that we table Senate Bill 463.
Senator Bradley moves to table on Senate Bill 463. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no.
No.
The ayes have it. You've tabled Senate Bill 463. Senator Bradley.
I move for 5-minute recess.
Recess for 1 minute.
They're not going to be able to.